The night before our 15th wedding anniversary, my husband sat across from me at the kitchen table and helped me choose the restaurant where we would celebrate. He even asked me what flowers I wanted. I remember smiling at him. I remember thinking, after 15 years, he still knows how to make me feel loved. What I didn't know was that the same man sitting across from me, helping me plan our anniversary, had already chosen the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. And he had been preparing to leave me for months. I found out because of one email. Not a love letter, not a photograph, not a confession, just a confirmation from a real estate agent, thanking my husband for completing the paperwork on a house I had never seen. The house wasn't in my name. It wasn't in our name. And when I looked at the purchase date, my hands started shaking. It had been bought 3 months before our anniversary. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the name listed beside his on the documents. A woman I had trusted. A woman who had been sitting at our dinner table. A woman my husband had introduced to me as just a friend. And suddenly, all those little things I had dismissed over the previous year began fitting together. The late nights. The secret phone calls. The sudden interest in his appearance. The weekends he claimed were devoted to work. And the strange way he had started encouraging me to make plans for my life without him. I had thought my marriage was entering a new chapter. I didn't realize my husband had already written the ending. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Claire, and for 15 years, I believed I knew the man I married. I was wrong. For the next few seconds, I simply stared at the screen. I read the email again, then a third time. I was hoping I had misunderstood it. Maybe the house wasn't his. Maybe the name beside his belonged to someone with the same name. Maybe there was an explanation that would make everything I was seeing harmless. But deep down, I already knew. The email had been sent by a real estate agent named Melissa Carter. The subject line read, "Congratulations on your new home." The message was brief. The agent thanked my husband, Daniel, for completing the final documents and congratulated him and Vanessa Reed on their new property. Vanessa. I knew that name. I had heard it hundreds of times. Vanessa was the woman Daniel always described as a friend from work. She had come to our house for dinner. She had brought wine on my birthday. She had even hugged me once and told me how lucky I was to have a husband like Daniel. I had believed her. I had trusted her. And now I was staring at a document suggesting that my husband had bought a house with her. I pushed my chair backward. My legs felt weak. I walked to the living room where Daniel was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled. What happened? I couldn't answer. He put his phone down. Claire? I looked at the man I had loved for 15 years. The man who knew exactly how I took my coffee. The man who had held my hand when my mother died. The man who had slept beside me every night, while secretly building a life somewhere else. Who's Vanessa? His expression changed. It was subtle. So subtle that another woman might not have noticed. But after 15 years of marriage, I knew every expression on his face. His smile disappeared. His shoulders stiffened. And for the first time that night, he looked afraid. Why are you asking me that? I held up my phone. I received an email. He didn't move. I walked closer. It says congratulations on your new home. Daniel stared at the screen, then at me. Then back at the screen. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. Claire, it's not what you think. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because those 6 words were so familiar. Every betrayed woman knows them. It's not what you think. The sentence people use when they haven't figured out what lie to tell yet. Then tell me what it is. It's complicated. No. My voice shook. It isn't complicated. You bought a house. He stood. I was going to tell you. When? He looked away. After the anniversary. My heart dropped. After our anniversary? He didn't answer. I stared at him. You were going to celebrate 15 years of marriage with me. And then tell me you bought a house with another woman? It's not like that. Then what is it like? He rubbed his forehead. I needed somewhere to stay. I felt something inside me crack. Somewhere to stay? Yes. Why? He didn't answer. I stepped closer. Why did my husband need somewhere to stay? His silence became an answer of its own. I whispered, "You were leaving me." Daniel finally looked at me, and that was when I saw it. Not guilt, not confusion. Relief. The relief of a man whose secret had finally been discovered because he no longer had to carry it alone. I covered my mouth. "You were actually leaving me." "Claire, how long? Please. How long have you been planning to leave me?" He sat down. I remained standing. 6 months, he said quietly. 6 months. I closed my eyes. 6 months of birthdays, dinners, conversations, kisses, arguments, grocery shopping, family gatherings, and ordinary mornings. 6 months of pretending. Then I remembered something. No. Daniel looked up. What? It wasn't 6 months. He frowned. I shook my head slowly. It started before that. He didn't speak. Didn't it? He looked away. My voice broke. That's why you started staying late. Silence. That's why you suddenly started working out. Silence. That's why you bought new shirts you never wore around me. Nothing. That's why you started telling me I should focus more on myself. His eyes closed. And suddenly, memories came rushing back. 3 months earlier, I had complained that Daniel seemed distant. He had kissed my forehead and said, "You worry too much." 2 months earlier, I had asked why he was suddenly spending so much time on his phone. He had said, "Work has been stressful." A month earlier, I had suggested we take a weekend trip together. He had said he couldn't get away. And then, just last week, I had asked him what he wanted for our 15th anniversary. He had smiled. "Whatever makes you happy." I had thought that was romantic. Now I understood. He didn't care what I wanted because his future was no longer with me. I sat down. My hands were trembling. "Does Vanessa know?" Daniel swallowed. "Yes." The room suddenly felt smaller. "How long has she known?" He hesitated. "Claire, how long?" "Almost a year." "A year." I stared at him. Almost a year. That meant while I was celebrating our 14th anniversary, he had already been building something with her. While I was choosing anniversary photos, she knew. While I was telling my friends how lucky I was to have such a loyal husband, she knew. While I was sleeping beside him, she knew. I felt tears running down my face. "Did she know you were married?" "Yes." That answer hurt more than anything. Because Vanessa wasn't some stranger who had accidentally fallen in love with a married man. She knew. She knew exactly who I was. She knew exactly whose husband she was taking. I whispered. She ate at my table. Daniel said nothing. She sat in my house. Nothing. She called me her friend. His eyes lowered. "And you let her." "I never meant for this to happen." I looked at him. "You never meant for this to happen?" My voice rose. "You didn't accidentally buy a house, Daniel." He flinched. "You didn't accidentally sign documents." I wiped my tears. "You didn't accidentally hide it from me." My voice cracked. "And you certainly didn't accidentally help me plan our anniversary while preparing to leave me." He had no answer. I stood. "Where is the house?" He looked confused. "What?" "The house you bought." "Claire, I don't think—" "Where is it?" He gave me the address. I memorized it. Then I asked one final question. "Is Vanessa living there?" Daniel looked at the floor. "Not yet. Not yet." Those 2 words changed everything. Because suddenly I realized something. They weren't just planning to leave me. They were preparing for a future. A future that hadn't happened yet. Which meant there was still something I didn't know. I walked upstairs without saying another word. I went into our bedroom. Daniel followed. "Claire, please don't do anything tonight." I opened the closet. "I'm not doing anything." I pulled out a suitcase. He stared at me. "What are you doing?" I folded a few clothes. "I need space." "Where are you going?" "I don't know." He stepped toward me. "Please don't leave." I stopped folding. Then I turned around. For 15 years, I had imagined what it would feel like to hear those words from my husband. I had imagined that if our marriage ever reached a breaking point, he would fight for me. But now that he was saying it, they meant nothing. Because he wasn't asking me to stay because he loved me. He was asking me to stay because my leaving would make his betrayal real. I looked at him through my tears. You already left me, Daniel. He froze. You just forgot to tell me. I zipped the suitcase, and as I walked toward the bedroom door, I noticed something sitting on his nightstand. A second phone. I had never seen it before. Daniel noticed me looking at it. His face changed immediately. Claire, don't. I picked it up. The screen lit up. There was one unread message. From Vanessa. I can't wait until she's finally out of our way. My entire body went cold. But that wasn't the message that destroyed me. It was the one underneath it. A message from Daniel, sent earlier that afternoon. After the anniversary, everything will be over. She won't suspect a thing. I stared at those words until they blurred through my tears. The anniversary. Our anniversary. The dinner I had spent days planning. The flowers I had asked him to choose. The restaurant we had just agreed on. It wasn't supposed to be a celebration. It was supposed to be his final performance. And suddenly, I understood why Daniel had been so eager to make the night perfect. He wanted me to remember our last anniversary as beautiful, because he had already decided it would be our last. But there was something neither Daniel nor Vanessa knew. I hadn't told Daniel everything about my life either. And now that I knew what he was planning, I decided I wasn't going to confront him the way he expected. I was going to find out exactly how much of my marriage had been a lie. And before that anniversary dinner was over, one of us was going to lose everything. I didn't sleep that night. Daniel did. At least, he pretended to. He lay beside me with his back turned, breathing slowly, while I stared at the ceiling and replayed everything I had learned. The house. Vanessa. The second phone. The messages. The anniversary. Our entire marriage suddenly felt like a crime scene, and every memory was evidence. At 2:17 in the morning, Daniel shifted in his sleep. I turned my head and looked at him. For 15 years, that face had been the first thing I saw most mornings. I had kissed that forehead. I had worried about those tired eyes. I had held that hand through sickness, grief, financial struggles, and every difficult season we had faced together. I had defended him when people criticized him. I had sacrificed for him. And now I was lying beside a stranger wearing my husband's face. I quietly reached for my phone. I took photographs of everything. The second phone. The messages. The real estate email. The address of the house. The documents I had found in the drawer. I didn't confront him again. Not yet. Because something had become clear to me. Daniel had spent months preparing his escape. I had only just discovered it. That meant he had a plan. And if I wanted the truth, I needed to know what that plan was. The next morning, I acted normal. I made breakfast. I poured his coffee. I even kissed his cheek before he left for work. He looked at me strangely. "You're okay?" I smiled. "I'm fine." He seemed relieved. And that was the moment I realized something painful. He believed he had gotten away with it. He thought the woman he had deceived for 15 years was still sitting at the kitchen table, unaware. He had no idea I had spent the entire night putting the pieces together. After he left, I called the real estate agent. Melissa answered. "Good morning, this is Melissa. My name is Claire Morgan." There was a pause. "How can I help you?" "I believe you recently handled a property purchase for my husband, Daniel Morgan." Another pause. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't discuss a client's private transaction." "I understand." I swallowed. "But I'm not asking you to tell me anything private. I just need to know whether the property at 418 Willow Creek Drive is the same property Daniel purchased." Silence. Then she said carefully, "How did you get that address?" "I found it in my husband's documents." Another pause. "I can't confirm anything." I understood. She had already told me enough. "Thank you." I hung up. Then I searched the address online. The house appeared immediately. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, large backyard, New kitchen. Beautiful windows overlooking a small lake. And beneath the listing was something that made my stomach twist. Sold 3 months earlier. I zoomed in on the photographs. The house was beautiful. But I didn't care about the house. I cared about what it represented. Daniel hadn't merely decided to leave me. He had built somewhere to go. He had planned the transition. He had arranged the finances. He had found another woman. And he had apparently decided I would be the last person to know. Then, I noticed something else. The property wasn't entirely paid for. There was a mortgage. And according to the documents I had photographed, Daniel had made a substantial down payment. Where had that money come from? That question changed everything. Because Daniel and I had always kept separate checking accounts, but our major finances were shared. At least, that's what I believed. Our savings. Our investment account. The emergency fund. The money we had been putting aside for retirement. I logged into our joint investment account. My hands froze. The balance was nearly $94,000 lower than it should have been. I stared at the screen. No. I checked again. Then I downloaded the statements. There were several withdrawals. Small at first. $4,000. $7,500. $12,000. Then $18,000. Over the course of 11 months. I felt sick. Daniel hadn't only been planning to leave me. He had been financing his exit with money we had built together. I called the bank. They explained that the withdrawals had been authorized through our joint account. Technically, Daniel had been allowed to make them. But there was something else. Several transfers had gone into an account I didn't recognize. I wrote down the account number. Then I called a lawyer. Her name was Rebecca Harris. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said something I wasn't expecting. Claire, don't confront him again. I already did. I mean, don't tell him what you've found. Why? Because if he's already transferred money and purchased property, you need to understand exactly what has happened before he realizes you know. I looked at the papers on my table. What should I do? Document everything. So I did. Every transaction. Every message. Every email. Every property document. Every unusual withdrawal. Every lie I could remember. I created a folder and named it simply 15 years. And then I waited. 3 days passed. Daniel became increasingly affectionate. It was almost unbearable. He brought me flowers. He hugged me from behind while I cooked. He asked if I wanted to watch a movie. He told me he loved me. And every time he said it, I felt something inside me die a little more. On Thursday evening, he came home carrying a bottle of champagne. Tomorrow, he said, smiling. We celebrate 15 years. I smiled back. Yes. He kissed me. I let him. Because I had made a decision. I was going to let him have his perfect anniversary. I was going to let him believe he had control. And then I was going to take that control away. The next morning, I dressed carefully. I wore the blue dress Daniel had always loved. I put on the earrings he had given me on our 10th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in weeks, I didn't see a betrayed wife. I saw a woman who was about to stop being afraid. At 6:30, Daniel came downstairs in a dark suit. He smiled when he saw me. Wow. I smiled. You look beautiful, he said. So do you. He walked toward me. For a second, I almost broke. Because despite everything, 15 years of love doesn't disappear in 5 days. There was still a part of me that wanted him to explain everything. A part of me that wanted him to say the whole thing was a misunderstanding. A part of me that wanted to wake up. But then I remembered the message. After the anniversary, everything will be over. She won't suspect a thing. I took his hand. Let's go. We arrived at the restaurant at 7. It was the same place where we had celebrated our 5th anniversary. Daniel had reserved a private table near the window. There were candles, flowers, a bottle of expensive wine, a small dessert waiting for us. He had arranged everything perfectly. Too perfectly. We sat down. Daniel raised his glass. To 15 years. I raised mine. To the truth. He smiled. What? Nothing. We clinked glasses. For the first 20 minutes, we talked about ordinary things. Work, family, the weather, old friends. Then Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. I've been thinking about us. I looked at him. I know. He smiled. I mean it. 15 years is a long time. Yes. And people change. I waited. I think sometimes two people can love each other and still grow apart. There it was. The speech. The beginning of the ending he had rehearsed. I nodded. You're right. He looked surprised. You agree? Yes. He took a breath. Claire, I don't want to hurt you. I almost laughed. But I didn't. I know. I've been unhappy for a while. I looked into his eyes. How long? About a year. I nodded. A year. Yes. Was that when you met Vanessa? His face went completely still. The color drained from his cheeks. What did you say? I smiled. Vanessa. His lips parted. I continued. The woman you bought a house with. He stared at me. Neither of us moved. Then he whispered, How did you? I reached into my purse. I placed printed photographs of the documents on the table. Then the bank statements. Then the photographs of his second phone. Then the messages. One by one. His face changed with every page. Finally, I placed the last photograph in front of him. The message. After the anniversary, everything will be over. She won't suspect a thing. Daniel looked at it. Then at me. Claire. I leaned back. Go ahead. He couldn't speak. Tell me it's not what I think. He lowered his eyes. I waited. Finally he whispered, I'm sorry. That was all. Not an explanation. Not a defense. Just 2 words. And somehow, they hurt more than anything else. I nodded slowly. Who is she? You know who she is. No. I looked at him. I knew the woman you pretended she was. I don't know the woman she actually is. He looked down. Vanessa and I have been together for almost a year. My heart still hurt hearing it aloud. Did you love her? He hesitated. Yes. I nodded. And did you love me? Another hesitation. I did. I smiled sadly. That sounds convenient. Claire. No. Answer me. He swallowed. I loved you. Past tense? He didn't answer. I nodded. That tells me everything. He reached across the table. I pulled my hand away. You stole our money. I was going to replace it. You bought a house with another woman. Yes. You lied to me for almost a year. Yes. You planned to leave me after our anniversary. He closed his eyes. Yes. I looked around the restaurant. 15 years ago, I had walked into this same place as a young bride. Tonight I was walking out as a woman I barely recognized. But before I left, there was one question I needed answered. Why? Daniel looked at me. Why did you do it? He was silent for a long time. Then he said, I thought I deserved to be happy. I stared at him. You thought happiness required destroying me? No. But you destroyed me anyway. He looked ashamed. I didn't know how to leave. I shook my head. You knew how to buy a house. He said nothing. You knew how to transfer money. Silence. You knew how to lie. Nothing. You knew how to build an entire life with another woman. His eyes filled with tears. But you didn't know how to tell your wife the truth. He looked away. I stood. Claire, please. I picked up my purse. Don't. Where are you going? Home. Our home? I looked at him. No, that word landed harder than I expected. Our home stopped being our home a long time ago. I walked away. But I didn't go home. I went to my sister's house. That night, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not quietly. Not gracefully. I cried until my chest hurt. I cried for the girl I had been when I married him. I cried for the woman I had become. I cried for every birthday I had spent believing his kisses were sincere. I cried because I had spent 15 years building a life with someone who had apparently been building an exit. And then I remembered something my mother once told me. She had said, sometimes the truth doesn't come to destroy you. Sometimes it comes because you have stayed too long in a place that was already destroying you. I didn't understand those words then. I understood them now. The following weeks were brutal. Daniel moved out. He wanted to stay in the house temporarily. I refused. The divorce process began. There were lawyers, financial statements, property valuations, arguments over accounts. And then came Vanessa. She contacted me. Her message was only 3 sentences. I never wanted to hurt you. Daniel told me your marriage was already over emotionally. I believed him. I stared at the message. Then I replied, "You believed the man who was still sleeping beside his wife." She didn't respond. A week later, I learned something that changed the entire situation. The house at Willow Creek wasn't actually in Vanessa's name. Her name appeared on the purchase documents because Daniel had told her he was putting her on the property after the divorce. But legally, the situation was more complicated. The down payment had come partly from our joint marital funds. My attorney challenged the transaction. Daniel fought it. He claimed the money was his. We produced the statements. He claimed I knew about the withdrawals. We produced the emails. He claimed the house had nothing to do with Vanessa. We produced the messages. Slowly, the story he had built began collapsing. And then Vanessa made a decision. She left him. Apparently, she had expected Daniel to be divorced, financially secure, and ready to start their new life. Instead, she discovered that the man she thought was leaving his wife cleanly had a mountain of financial and legal problems. One evening, Daniel called me. His voice sounded different. Tired. Small. "She's gone." I didn't respond. Vanessa left. I stared out the window. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know." He took a breath. "I lost everything." I almost told him he hadn't. But then I realized something. He had lost the life he had planned. I had lost the life I thought I had. Those were not the same thing. "You didn't lose everything, Daniel." He was quiet. "You still have yourself." "I don't know who I am anymore." "Juno," I closed my eyes. "I know that feeling." "Claire." "What? Do you think someday you could forgive me?" I thought about it. "I might." He sounded hopeful. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation." "I know. And it doesn't mean I forget." "I know. Then maybe." We ended the call. The divorce was finalized 8 months later. The house was sold. The money that could be recovered from our joint accounts was divided. Daniel had to take responsibility for the rest. And Vanessa disappeared from both of our lives. But the strangest part came afterward. For the first time in 15 years, I was alone. Completely alone. At first, I hated it. The silence in the house was enormous. There was no one asking what was for dinner. No one leaving shoes by the door. No one stealing the blankets. No one saying, "I'll be home late." For weeks, I thought the loneliness meant I had made the wrong decision. Then one morning, I woke up and realized something. I wasn't lonely. I was free. I made coffee and sat outside with a book. I started taking walks. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I went back to something I had abandoned years earlier, painting. I had loved painting when I was younger. Daniel used to say it was a hobby I would eventually outgrow. I hadn't outgrown it. I had simply stopped making room for myself. So I bought new brushes, new canvases, and I painted. For the first time in years, I created something that belonged entirely to me. 6 months later, I sold my first painting. Then another. Then another. I eventually rented a small studio. It wasn't the life I had imagined at 28. It was better. Because it was mine. One afternoon, almost 2 years after the anniversary that ended my marriage, I received an email. From Daniel. I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened it. He wrote, "Claire, I don't expect you to respond. I just wanted to say something I've been too ashamed to say for a long time. I thought leaving you would make me happy. I thought the problem was our marriage. I thought Vanessa was the future. I was wrong. The problem wasn't that I wanted a new life. The problem was that I became a person who believed I had to lie, steal, and destroy someone to get it. You gave me 15 years of your life. I repaid you with deception. I'll regret that for the rest of mine. I hope you're happy now. You deserve to be. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him. Because I no longer needed anything from him. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Not closure. I had already found it. A few months later, I was standing in my studio preparing for my first small exhibition when my sister walked in. She smiled. "You look happy." I looked around the room. At the paintings. At the sunlight coming through the windows. At the life I had built after losing the one I thought would last forever. "I am." She hugged me. Then she asked the question everyone eventually asked. "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" I laughed. "Maybe. But you're not looking?" "No." "Why?" I smiled. "Because I'm finally enjoying my own company." And that was the truth. I had spent 15 years believing love meant staying. Staying through disappointment. Staying through distance. Staying through lies. Staying because leaving felt like failure. But I finally understood something. Sometimes leaving isn't the failure. Sometimes staying is. The night before our 15th anniversary, Daniel had sat across from me at our kitchen table and helped me choose flowers. He had asked me what restaurant I wanted. He had smiled at me while secretly planning a future with another woman. At the time, I thought that night represented the beginning of the end of my marriage. I was wrong. It was the beginning of the end of the woman I had become inside that marriage. The woman who constantly questioned herself. The woman who ignored her instincts. The woman who believed she had to earn love by sacrificing pieces of herself. She disappeared that night. And in her place came someone stronger. Someone who understood that betrayal can take everything you thought your life was, and still leave you with something worth saving. Yourself. So if you're watching this, and you're living through something that feels impossible right now, remember this. You don't have to know what your entire future looks like. You only have to take the next honest step. Sometimes the person you trusted most will be the one who teaches you the hardest lesson. Sometimes the ending you never wanted becomes the beginning you desperately needed. And sometimes, the person who thought they were leaving you behind is actually the person who set you free. Daniel thought our 15th anniversary would be the night he finally escaped our marriage. He was right. He just didn't understand something. He wasn't the only one who was leaving. I was leaving too. I was leaving the fear, the self-doubt, the excuses, the woman who had spent 15 years making herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. And when I walked away from that marriage, I didn't walk away empty-handed. I walked away with the one thing Daniel could never take from me. My life, my future, and finally, myself. If you were Claire, would you have confronted Daniel at the anniversary dinner? Or stayed quiet, gathered evidence, and walked away like she did? And could you ever forgive a husband who secretly planned an entire new life with another woman? Tell me what you would have done in the comments.